Hello, good evening, welcome. It once again is All for United. We are back on your screens, ready for another evening of fun, frolics, and frantic debate around all things Manchester United. And of course, I couldn't do it without a brand spanking new panel, and that's exactly what we have got this evening. You will notice, conspicuous by his absence, young Dan still has not won his battle against man flu. It has taken severe hold of him, and he is still tucked up in his bed. Probably won't even get on here tonight. I think he's snoozing away peacefully. But we have still got two fantastic people who are becoming somewhat the regular right about now. Just below me, we have Mr. Matt Morgan. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Thank you very much for having me on again. It's good to be back. Another show. Plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
Pleasure to have you on. You do very well when you're on here, so it's all good. And, of course, begins with an M, but hopefully we're not going to be getting Matt and Mark mixed up quite too much here today. But, yes, back again by popular demand. Been a while since we've had him on. Mark W., how are you doing, sir? Oh, he's muted. So we'll unmute him to make life easier. There we go. Try again.
Right, yeah. I thought it was something I'd done for a minute. I'm delighted to be back. And you mentioned fun and frolics. I'll try my best at the fun. I don't think you'll get much frolicking out of me, though, sadly.
Oh, I thought that was in the contract, the frolickings. I'll have to have a word with Connor. He's obviously taking that word out again. Outrageous. It's all about the frolics. Well, listen, Twilumber's in the chat, so there's bound to be all manner of conversation. I don't know whether we've got positive Twilumber, negative Twilumber, hilarious Twilumber. It'll be very interesting to see which one's popped out today. So that'll be great fun. And then T, as ever, lovely to have you along for the ride also. So listen, if you're here, you know the score by now. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Push that like button. If you like it. If you don't like it, obviously you don't have to. We're not trying to force you, but it'd be nice if you did. You know, support the supporters and all that jazz. So obviously no football till Bank Holiday Monday, which means we're probably not going to be doing our preview till Saturday. So we thought to ourselves, what can we do? How can we have a little show midweek? And there's plenty of stuff that we needed to be talking about. And I had a lead. I was ready for where I was going to go with today's show. And then, of course, we had the Champions League semi-finals. And Jadon Sancho decided to do a bit of a masterclass. And all of a sudden, everybody's chatting now about how good Jadon Sancho has been whilst he's been at Borussia Dortmund. And it's one of those things, Mark, that I find really interesting because obviously Ole Gunnar Solskjaer brought him in, having seen him play for Borussia Dortmund. We brought him into much fanfare. Perhaps his arrival was somewhat dampened by the arrival of Cristiano Ronaldo, also turning up at the same time, which was enough to steal the headlines from just about anybody. I think the only way there would have been a slightly bigger headline than Ronaldo would be if we'd have had the Queen playing for us. And that would have been quite something. So he turns up and it hasn't quite gone the way Jadon Sancho and any of us, I think, really would have expected it to have gone. He had some good games, up and down. And then, obviously, Ten Hag takes over. He has a bit of time off. Ten Hag's talking to him, gives him some time away to go and sort himself out if he needs to, brings him back into the side, up and down again, up and down. And then eventually, out of seemingly nowhere, Erik Ten Hag mentions that he's not training at the level, basically, that he would be expecting. Now, he does that. Jadon Sancho flies off on Twitter, telling everybody that's not a correct statement, that he always trains hard, all of those sorts of things, and rumours start to abound. And this is where the fan base went, all right, well, if he's going to do that, let's get rid of him. He's going to go. So now that we've seen Jadon Sancho start to perform again, naturally, the wonderful fans, as we always do, start to go a little bit, well, hang on a minute. If he's going to play well, perhaps we'd like him back here. So the first question is a simple one. Is there anything that you've seen over the course of the last few months that would make you think that Jadon Sancho should be coming back to Manchester United at the end of the loan? Or are you still in the camp of, until he sorts his attitude out with Ten Hag, it's not going to happen? Whereabouts do you sit just on that in general at the moment?
It's a baffling one for me because I saw Sancho when he was a youth player at City, and he looked an absolutely tremendous prospect. I mean, really top level at that age group. No surprise he went to Dortmund and did well there. When we signed him, I thought it was a fantastic signing, exactly the kind of player we needed. So I find it hard to explain, really. I mean, obviously, we heard about the conflict with Ten Hag, and I suppose whether it's worth bringing him back depends partly on what's happening with Ten Hag, and partly, if nothing's happening with Ten Hag, what Ten Hag feels about it. We've seen it before where some players perform somewhere and struggle somewhere else, and it's hard to explain sometimes. You'd probably have to try and explain what goes on in Jadon Sancho's head. I mean, he plays in front of big crowds at Dortmund, so it's not as simple as saying, well, he couldn't cut it when playing against, playing at Old Trafford or in a big crowd. I don't know. Sometimes you just have to hold your hand up and say, I don't know. Just remember seeing him playing for United so many times and just not seeing him do what he did at Dortmund. The confidence to go past players, the sort of to cut inside. He was so often making the wrong decisions on the pitch. I find it really hard to explain where it went wrong with Jadon Sancho. But if the question is, should he come back? Yeah, I think it just depends probably on the chemistry with Ten Hag and whether whether that's going to work. If not, then there's no point.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Matt? Because what Mark says is correct, effectively. We know that logistically it is going to be a case of it's only going to work if Ten Hag's happy to have him back. Obviously, again, the rumours are that Ten Hag just expected him to apologise and move on. Hasn't happened. At that point, everyone was lauding Ten Hag. Everyone was saying, well, this is it. We need to be strict. We've got to get rid of these people in the club who are causing these problems and, player power and all of that sort of thing. Do you think that this has basically come to fruition because Ten Hag's star has sort of descended a little bit amongst some fans? They're a bit worried. There's a lot more discussion now than there was 6 or 7 months ago when we were talking about Ten Hag. And as his stars started to decline a bit and Sancho's is getting higher, people are starting to think, well, if Ten Hag doesn't stay next season, Sancho could come back. And if this is the player we're going to get, then that's a player worth having. Where would you stand with it?
To be honest with you, yeah, I'd probably go along the lines of probably saying, I think a lot of it's the environment because as far as I'm aware, Sancho he's not the only player where it's happened to, where we've been in this situation. Where we know what they're capable of. Obviously, Rashford's a good example. I think obviously Rashford's still at the club, not been loaned out, etc. But you know the ability of the player first and foremost, which is why they've obviously paid the money for him in the first place. Like Mark said at City, you looked at him and thought, "Wow, what a prospect they've actually got there." Obviously, it was at the time it was sad to say with it being City, but I think when we first signed him, obviously the hype was unreal. I think the buzz around the fans was great. Everyone expected big things from him. But I think since his fallout with Ten Hag, it has become quite apparent that it's not really going to work. Personally, I can't see it working if Ten Hag was to stay long term next season, for example. I don't see it working between him and Ten Hag. But again, like you say, it all depends on Ten Hag's future. Will he even be there next season? Nobody still knows the answer to that question. So I think a lot of it will probably come clearer in the summer. Would I like to see Sancho back? Yes and no. Yes, obviously, he can get back to his best, but no, like Mark said, if he's going to have the issues between him and the manager, and even if a new manager comes in, will the new manager want Sancho? Will he be part of his plans? That's something else you've got to take into consideration. But I'd say overall, yeah, I think a lot of it's manager dependent.
Do you both think Ten Hag was right to take the stance that he did? Because, again, we're not behind the scenes. We don't see everything that's going on. We hear, the rumour mill around Manchester United is just ridiculous. There are so many stories that come out from around the ground, from inside the club, from outside the club, from fan channels, everywhere. There is news and things that's coming out. But if we take the generally agreed idea, which is that Sancho was spending a lot of time doing late nights on shows and things like that, and that he was getting in late for training, wasn't necessarily, take Ten Hag's word at it that he wasn't training as well as perhaps he could have done. do we go along with the way Ten Hag was choosing to deal with it? And if Sancho comes back, are we in a situation, do you think, where if he still refuses to apologise, we just get rid of him because we need to have that control for the manager within the dressing room? Or do you think there is a possibility that people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe could turn around and say, sort of put it to bed? It was months ago. Forget about it. It doesn't need. And if he does that then undermine Ten Hag moving into next season, which then automatically puts him at a bit of a default as they're starting to have that? So first part, Mark, do you agree with Ten Hag taking the stance that he did? And two, can you see the upper echelons getting involved and sort of keeping, because he is an asset and he does have the ability to play well? Where do you kind of see that going?
The boss has got to be the boss. The manager's got to be able to manage. And, it's certainly a problem we've had at United in recent years. Call it player power, call it what you want. Sancho is not the only player, let's face it, who has underperformed in the United shirt. And there's clearly issues there. And, I mean, one of the reasons why I still back Ten Hag, should he remain, to actually deliver with the right structure above him, which I know we'll be talking about later, is because he is decisive. He's shown it with Ronaldo, he's shown it with Sancho, he's shown it with other situations as well. And the more I hear interviews over the last few years with the likes of Mourinho and Ollie and even Van Gaal about, how they didn't feel they had full control over things, it seems to me that Ten Hag, if it's going to work, has to be the boss. It almost annoys me a little bit as well that Sancho has delivered so well for Dortmund. I'm not saying he deliberately wasn't giving his all at United, but it does say something, doesn't it, that if someone suddenly, and he was given enough chances on the pitch, that came quite late in the day, the conflict with Ten Hag. He'd been given a lot of chances on the pitch before then to deliver, not done it. Count it on certainly two hands the number of times I thought he was looking good in a United shirt in that period. It is a bit annoying that suddenly he goes somewhere else, and then I can't explain it. Maybe there is a good reason. I don't know. Maybe he needs the kind of management style he's getting at Borussia Dortmund. I don't know. But no, I think you've got to back Ten Hag. You can't. If Jim Ratcliffe is going to get this club running right, then he's got to stop this business of imposing players on the manager, head coach, or whatever we call him in the new structure. You've got to have that control, like Fergie did. I mean, we've got the best model of all, haven't we, in Fergie? And I remember in the early days, fans found it inexplicable when Fergie got rid of people like Strachan, Whiteside, McGrath. And actually those players went on and had good careers elsewhere as well. I mean, McGrath was fantastic for Villa. Whiteside probably didn't deliver for Everton. Strachan certainly did at Leeds. But Fergie knew that in the dressing room he wanted, they weren't right. You've got to give the manager the support to make those kind of decisions.
I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously we'll get to a structure, and that is a big part of it, what you were just mentioning there, and again we'll pop to that bit towards the end. But that, I think what Mark says there is right, and I agree that there is a part of me that really does wonder why it is that he can perform over there in Germany, because he's done it before he came to us, he's done it after he came to us, so he has the ability to do that. I mean, this was an interesting point by Twilumber, and one that at the time I kind of agreed with. I did think that Ten Hag coming out and publicly telling the world that he wasn't training to the level he needed to wasn't necessarily going to be the way to grease the wheels, and it wasn't helpful. That all of that was always kept in the back room, in the dressing room. You didn't see it with Fergie. In fact, the only time we knew there was a problem in the dressing room with Fergie was after he'd accidentally larruped a boot at David Beckham's face, and we're all like, blimey, he didn't have that before the end of the game. And at that point, we knew there was something wrong. So, again, the same question. Do you think that it could potentially be the case that he's imposed back on Ten Hag? But equally, why is it that he's performing better over there in Germany than he was here? what was different? Is it the management style? Is he being asked to do something different in Germany than he was doing here? What's the crack? Why is it that he can perform in one place and not in the other?
I think tactics is quite and the way the team set up seems quite an important thing with Sancho, but not just him. A lot of players, that's how it generally works to suit the way they want to play. I think I remember when was it Carrick? I think before, was it after Ollie went, or when he took interim chat? It was only for a few games, but Sancho, he did start performing. I know it was only for a handful of games, but again, that's how Carrick wanted the team to play. He just, you know what I mean? And then when Ten Hag's come in, he's kept the Sancho, and then there's a dip in performances. Then the issues start, and it just continues and continues. I think ultimately, I think the style of play is one thing. I think the fact he's gone to Dortmund and he's playing like he is speaks volumes, to be honest. Whether that means Ten Hag will have to adapt if Sancho does come back, will people above Ten Hag, Ratcliffe, Berard, whoever, will they ultimately say this is how the team needs to play? There's been rumours of that. That is going to be the case, that they're going to say this is how the team needs to play. Will that suit Sancho in the long run if he does come back? That's the question. But I think as it stands at the minute, Ten Hag needs the control. I think there's been too much player power going on at the club for quite a while now, and it has become apparent that it is a continuous problem. I think this is a prime example of it. But yeah, I think if he does come back, I think whether they'll have to adapt it a little bit to how he wants to play to get the best out of him, possibly. But will they do that? Who knows?
Interesting, very much so. Rajat, lovely to see you, mate. Thank you for popping in. NT strongly disagrees. This is strange for NT to strongly disagree. NT is normally quite in the middle of the road, so there must have been something that's upset him. I don't know who's upset you, NT. So you're gonna have to let us know. I don't know if that was me. It could be. It's quite often me. I upset a lot of people. But he says ETH gave Sancho special treatment multiple times, sent away to recover and help his mental health. Defended his poor performances, and Sancho couldn't handle one bit of criticism. And I think, again, I'm putting up, I kind of go with what Tulumba's saying here. You can critique, but it's kind of using certain words. Sancho didn't need to go off and make the statement he made, absolutely. But I think equally, Ten Hag, when he put it out there, telling the world what he thought, you know, I suppose if you try and put that in a human perspective, it would be the equivalent of, I mean, I work in a school, right? So if my head teacher has got a problem with something that I've done and I'm not doing right, I want my head teacher to pull me into the office and tell me, Barry, you're not doing the right thing. This is what I think I need you to do. And it won't be pleasant, but I would expect her to do that. Now, if she chose instead to do a staff meeting, or worse, in assembly, turn around and go, now, Barry, I don't think you've done this correctly, I'd rightly be embarrassed. And I think, knowing me as a person, I wouldn't just be embarrassed, I'd be blinking angry. And I would imagine that would be the moment I hand my resignation in, because that's just unacceptable. And I suppose when you extrapolate, I mean, granted, if I was on like 200 grand a week, I might take it for the sake of that, you know, it's a bit of a difference. I work about 8 years before I'm going to get 200 grand. But the point is you wouldn't want that. So if that gets put out all across the world, he's not doing what he should be doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Barry. I mean, I was a manager in a former, I still do management jobs now, but on a more temporary basis. But I was a manager in a former life, and my view was you always take someone in a room, tell them what you think there, and never breathe a word to the rest of the world. It's the only way to do it. But I don't recall, I might be wrong, I don't recall Ten Hag doing it with anyone else. I don't, you know, I mean, Mourinho did that all the time. Mourinho was always calling people out to the media. I don't, and you almost wonder, that comment is right. He did bend over backwards before that to support Sancho, let him go away, let him try and get himself together, give him chances in the team. Couple of possibilities. One, he felt personally betrayed by Sancho and just kind of lost it for a bit. Or he thought, I've got to go up to the next level with this lad and provoke an even bigger reaction. And almost, you know, win or bust situation. And if he goes, he goes. And can't help thinking maybe it was something like that. There was really just he got fed up with it. He just thought, right, well, it's come to the point now whether he either delivers or he doesn't, or he goes somewhere else. And I can only assume that's the case, because Ten Hag doesn't strike me as somebody who would habitually call out players in that way. I don't think he's done it before.
Well, you were right. I mean, Dave's put in here, Luke Shaw was Jose's favourite. And,
exactly.
Jose Mourinho nearly ended Luke Shaw, really. Constant jibes about his weight and his fitness and all of those sorts of things. And they're just not helpful, and we forget, like, it goes out to the world. And the minute the world sees that,
no.
I'm back, don't worry.
Right, you frozen.
Connor's gremlins have got into the computer again. But it's almost like, if even if you were thinking of getting rid of the player, that devalues the player, because now you're telling every person he doesn't train as well as you would expect him to. So all that's ever going to do is drive the value of the player down. So if you're sitting there thinking this is not a player that's I want to keep, denigrating him in front of everybody isn't really going to work. And Jennifer Jordan saying Sancho was on the kind of money that could have saved Bury FC. I mean, that's true of most Premier League players.
Saved a lot of clubs, yeah.
So it's one of those. No, my computer, touch wood, has been okay lately. So let's not be having a go at my stuff. I'm doing a great impression of a very. I am. Look at that. I can see it on YouTube. I'm not moving. But absolutely on stream, I can see myself go. But you're quite right. On YouTube, not moving at all. That's entertaining as. Completely off topic now, but it's happened, and it's not even a back in the war moment. But did you know that the old Doctor Who's, they used to delete them on the BBC randomly in the 60s? There's a whole bunch of them. There's about 90 odd episodes that are missing, and in itself, that's quite funny. But as a result, all they could do was get pictures for some of them. So all of the audio actually exists. And that's kind of what this reminds me of at the moment. You can be listening to the audio of Doctor Who and you just see a still footage. And the audio carries on. And then there's another still of something else happening. It's the weirdest TV experience ever. And that appears to be what I've got here. So I'll be intrigued to know what happens if you... So I've just kind of come out of YouTube and gone back in. No, I'm definitely frozen. So what I will do is I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to nip out and come back in again just for you lot, because I know how annoying that's going to be to just watch me in that position.
What if you can't get back? We'll be on our own.
Oh, don't you worry. I'll be back. I'm like him. I'll be back. Not a problem at all. But Matt, I suppose it was over to you, really, wasn't it, on that point? So Mark had just sort of mentioned his bit about how Ten Hag had made it public. Do you think that was really where it went wrong? Do you think maybe he should have not done that and instead just walked away and dealt with it more privately?
Yeah, he probably could have handled it a lot better. I think ultimately, it's one of them. Has he done it for a reaction, like you say, and it's kind of backfired? But I feel like Sancho was one of them players, though, because there was talk, I think, when he didn't get picked, or he was with the England squad at some point and he wasn't being played. I think he was causing trouble in camp with England. So is he one of them? Is it just a mentality issue? But yeah, I think Ten Hag, he could have handled it a little bit better coming out of public like Mourinho did with Shaw. That sort of backfired a little bit and didn't go down too well with Shaw and certain other players as well from what we were reading. But yeah, I think I can see why he's done it. But doing it privately, doing it behind closed doors, probably the way forward. And how he should have handled it a little bit better. But again, Sancho coming out on social media, I keep saying it every time I come on the show. Social media is an absolute curse at the minute when it comes to footballers, and the relationship with managers. It's awful. It really is awful, and that's just a prime example.
Well, it's even worse now. Now it looks like I'm in a dark room. It's gone entirely. It's like my blackout blinds have finally blacked out the light, and that's it. So It's like I'm in a cave now. It's really weird because you two can see me moving, right? So this is perfectly normal. But yeah, according to YouTube right now, I'm currently in Wookiee Hole. So it's quite a thing. Listen, we'll sort it, don't worry. But whilst we're doing that, I've got a question for both of you. And it's an interesting question, I felt, because I like to sit here and wonder where he stands with other players. So what's your thoughts of Garnacho? Is Garnacho a player you want to keep?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's the other point I was going to say, really. It's not like we're short of options. I mean, if Rashford gets his act together again, anyway, I think Ahmad's a good prospect as well if he's developed. So I think, players in that kind of Sancho position, I think we have got options. Garnacho, for me, is a definite keeper for as long as we can. No question. He's only going to get better.
And I find that quite interesting because I'm sure Matt would agree with that. And what about Anthony, Matt? Would you keep Anthony?
Personally, no. The problem is with Ten Hag, he's one of them. I think his relationship with him at Ajax, I think that's playing a big part in it. Whether Ten Hag's finally seeing now that he's not quite bringing what he wants to the team, I'm not quite sure. I think it's quite abundantly clear the difference between, say, the other day, I think it was against Sheffield when he took him off 50-odd minutes in, brought Ahmad on, you noticed the difference instantly. There was no sort of like, oh, Ahmad's come on and done exactly the same. There was a difference, and you saw the difference. For me, Anthony, I think the issue of Anthony is the money they've paid for him as well. I think that's weighing quite heavily on him, which he does with a lot of players. Whether that's the same for Sancho, maybe you could argue. Personally, I can see why he's brought Anthony in. He was always going to bring a couple from Ajax. Martinez was probably the standout one where you thought like, yeah, absolute brilliant signing. Anthony on the flip side hasn't really cut it. Do you give him another season if Ten Hag stays to prove himself? Maybe. Personally, I would look to offload him, but that's just me.
Lovely. And I'll ask both of you to do this. I'm going to nip out again and see if I can sort out my Wookiee Hole problem now. But what about Casemiro? Would you or would you not keep Casemiro? Both of you. And I'll be back.
I'd keep him. I'd certainly keep him for now. I mean, he's not a long-term solution. He never was. I mean, I've got to say, he's been very frustrating at times this season. I think sometimes there's been certain games. I think I was on here after the West Ham game when I thought he was magnificent. Some of the passes he was playing in that game, and other games, it just get the impression he thinks he's playing in a testimonial or something. It's almost like it's really strange this season with Casemiro. But I think someone with his experience, his mentality, got to be worth keeping around. But I mean, we've already mentioned a lot of players. We've mentioned Sancho, we've mentioned Anthony, we've mentioned Casemiro. We could go through we've mentioned Rashford as well. You go through a whole load of players who we know have got talent. Anthony's got talent, certainly in his left foot. He's got a magnificent left foot. Wish he'd use his right a bit more. Glad he used it at against Liverpool in that game. Wish he'd use it a bit more. But, these are talented players and they're not one-offs. It's happening, and it's been happening for years all through the club that we buy obviously good players or players who look like good buys when we bring them in, and they don't perform for whatever reason. And that's the thing we've got to crack. It's, I've not got any easy answers to that, but I think dwelling on individual players in some ways is kind of missing the point. We're constantly underperforming. Players we sign are constantly underperforming. Don't know what you've got to say about that.
Yeah,
Well, we're waiting.
I think Martial's one as well. I think he can understand. He's a bit different. Martial. He's been out more with injury. I think more than poor performances. You can't really judge him. You can only judge him on his injury record, which is a bit unfortunate for him. But
right.
Yeah, no,
Have you gone now?
It's one.
I thought you'd gone for a minute.
Oh, I think everyone's going. But no, I think Martial, judge him on his injury record. Hasn't really. Haven't seen enough of him. I think compared to a lot of the other ones. Casemiro is an interesting one. Would I keep him? Yeah, probably for the experience. Do I think he'll be a regular next season? Possibly not. I think we need to be looking at building for the future a bit more now. But he's a good player to have around the squad, like I say. But then again, are we going to have as many games next year? Also, we don't know where we're going to finish in the league. If we drop out Europe completely, we're not going to have as many games. So will we need as much squad depth? It's one of them. But personally, I'd keep Casemiro.
Oh, he's back. Great.
Oh,
yeah, I think we've agreed, Barry, that in the short term, we've got to be looking right away.
Normal. I can see me on you. Sorted. Right, there we go. Well done, boys. I've got track of what you're saying. And the reason why I bought those three players up, Garnacho, Anthony, Casemiro, which I was intrigued to see. So Jadon Sancho, when he arrived in August of 2021 and had that very first game at TNT, since then he's played 82 matches and scored 12 goals. Got win percentage of about 50%. Now, what I found interesting is that was obviously since 2021. Looking at 2022, Garnacho started playing then around about April 2022. He's now played 81 games and scored 14 goals. You go to Anthony, since September 22, he's played 80 games and scored 11 goals. Casemiro, August 2022, played 79 games, scored 12 goals. So we're looking at people that have been here a season less, played the same sort of number of games. He's had a little bit more than them. And generally, looking at Garnacho, who when you argue about him, you would say is a younger player. You look at Anthony, who's a player we're all saying is one-footed and probably playing on the wrong side for the foot that he uses. And Casemiro, who this season, everybody's saying his legs have gone and probably should be put out to pasture. He seems fairly level with those sorts of players. But the reason why I started with Garnacho, because as soon as I asked that question, I think both of you went, I'd be keeping him. Absolutely. But yet their numbers, fairly similar. Garnacho's just got that couple more. What would you say is the main difference between Sancho and Garnacho in terms of that idea, the fact that we want to keep Garnacho, but Sancho will be more happy to see go?
I think Garnacho's delivered a lot more even when he hasn't scored, though. I think... and he knows he makes those runs. He's decisive in his runs. And Anthony too often makes the wrong decisions. And incidentally, I've not said get rid of Anthony. I'm still, part of me is still hopeful in another season that we could see the best of him. And certainly don't think he's delivered yet. But with Garnacho, I think we've seen him build, we've seen him grow, we've seen him get better. I mean, last season he was definitely a bench option. He was someone to bring off the bench, and that's where the majority of his games last season, I think, came. This season, he's certainly been a first-team starter, and he has a way of drawing defenders out and creating space for others, even when he's not delivering, scoring, assisting himself. So I think that's the difference for me. Whereas I think if you're a left back playing against Anthony, you know which way he's going to go. However talented he is with his left foot, he's not going to go round the back of you. He's, you know what to do. He's too easy. He's too predictable to play against.
True, Matt. Anything you'd add on that?
I think attitude's a big thing. Obviously, Garnacho's obviously a bit younger than Sancho is, but obviously he's one of ours, and he's come up through the ranks, and I think you can see now he is slowly developing, and he has become, he is a first team regular. He's one of the first names on the team sheet more often than not, week in, week out now, Garnacho. But I think attitude, and like Mark said, he does a lot more off the ball. I think a lot of the time our attackers, they sort of get judged on what they do going forward, but you don't always notice the off the ball work that they generally tend to do. It's a tricky one. I feel like Sancho, so much off the ball, doesn't do quite as much, which is quite obvious sometimes, especially when he was at United. But I think overall, Sancho's one of them is, I think work ethic and attitudes is the differences between the two players. I think Garnacho's an upcoming promising player, but again, Sancho could be exactly the same under the right manager, under the right setup. There's no reason why he couldn't perform at the same level, but. Yeah, it's one of them. I don't see why he couldn't do it.
Well, there you go. That's the Sancho chat, really. I think we kind of didn't expect much more than that. If you haven't already, please do like, purely because we're on to 9, and I like double figures. So if you can hit 10, that would be superb. So If you want to get your mum or your nan to join in and just push the button, that's fine. Do that as well. Or your dad, not gender specific here. Do what you like. Anybody, just someone. Your dog could do it if you want. That's not a problem. Right. That's Sancho. So if he comes back, he comes back. If he doesn't, he doesn't. We'll get over that one. But the next step I sort of wanted to get through here was a little bit about what Ten Hag himself said about it. So he actually said in his press conference prior to the Palace game on Monday, let's say this. Yesterday, he played very good. And I've already talked a lot about this. He's a very good player. Yesterday, he showed why Man United bought him. And he showed that it represents a high value for Manchester United, which is good. I'm happy for Jadon. And I'm happy with his performance for yesterday. We will see what's going to happen in the future. Now, I've got to be honest, hearing that like that sounds more to me when he's talking about a value. You've got that question hanging in your mind. Is that a value as in cash money value and we're looking forward to selling him in the summer? Or is that a value of where you can see what it is that he can do on the pitch? So therefore he possesses a value that we would need. So to be honest, I will be amazed if Jadon Sancho starts for us next season based on the way that Ten Hag is speaking there. But another thing he spoke about, which is quite interesting, was his relationship with Jason Wilcox. So he says we've talked every day from now and from last week in a very short period. We have to build a very intense relationship and we're working on it now to devise a plan. We already had a plan before he came, but of course we have to be aligned with that, and with it takes time. At the same time, we do not have that much time. So it's very cryptic he was talking about there. Now, the talk about Jason Wilcox is that he's walked into the club and that part of his job is to ensure there is a style of play, a structure, and I suppose what's the word I'm looking for here? A personality, I suppose, of the team, a way in which we're going to go and play. So, first thoughts. I mean, Mark, without putting too fine a point on it, you're much closer to my age than poor Matt is. And I can remember Jason Wilcox playing football for Blackburn Rovers regularly. I collected his stickers, not just his, that would be weird, but I can remember having his sticker in my sticker books when I was younger. And I don't recall him being a top-tier player, but he was all right. He was good. He wasn't necessarily top-tier. That doesn't really matter when it comes to backroom situation. No. Mike Phelan wasn't necessarily the greatest player in the world, but was a very good assistant manager. Steve McLaren, same gig. So, Alex Ferguson was a god-awful player, really, but unbelievable manager. So, where do you stand on the Jason Wilcox signing? The fact that he's come in, he's doing what he's doing. I mean, that wasn't hard, NT. I mean, my nan could have won the league with them in 95 if she was being paid the money they were being paid at the time.
We should have won it, then. We still should have won that.
We should have.
I hate even listening to that season. That was horrible, that end of the season. Anyway.
Just unbelievable.
I could probably have scored some of those goals. All missed in that last game as well.
Jason Wilcox, you're happy with him? Do you think that him and Ten Hag are going to get aligned and that we are going to see a personality, a style of play that we can really start seeing in there? Because what worried me was hearing Ten Hag say, we've got a style of play, because I'm not convinced I've seen that yet. What about you?
He was talking about as well having to sort of converge with Jason Wilcox's ideas. I mean, you can read too much into these things sometimes, but in the end, Ten Hag's not somebody he's not a journalist. He's not somebody who's sort of paid to put words together. And sometimes you can read too much. But the sense I got from it is there is some work that needs to be done. That's the impression I got between his ideas and Jason Wilcox's. And much as I said before about in terms of the playing side, in terms of dealing with the players, Ten Hag has got to be the boss. We do need some. Been crying out for a structure above it. I don't even know how good Jason Wilcox is going to be, but at least he's somebody with a footballing background in that kind of position above the manager, and we've been crying out for it for so long. So I mean, clearly Ratcliffe's brought him in. Wilcox is going to have a big say in that, and I think that's where Ten Hag is going to have the constraints. I think he's got to he's got to play along with that. So I think if there is any gulf between their ideas, I think Ten Hag will be the one that goes. Frankly, I think that's almost inevitable. So I hope they can get it right. I hope they can get on and play nicely together and all the rest of it. But I can't help thinking that it's going to be almost like the ultimatum for Ten Hag that perhaps he gave Sancho. You either deliver in this way, or off you go.
No, I think that sounds about right. And Matt, from your points of view, is there anything you're seeing about the whole Jason Wilcox arrival that excites you? Anything that you're seeing from that worries you? Because it's always the case when you get new management into a place. We spoke about how you take that into the working environment. Again, putting it back into a school, you get a new head teacher. They're going to have different ways of doing things. They'll have done different things in a school they were in before. They're going to want to implement some new things. Most people sit and watch for a little bit, see what the place is already like, and then think about what things they could add in. Some just come straight in, change everything, and everyone just goes, oh my gosh, what's going on? And doesn't know quite where they're going. What do you get? What sort of vibes do you get from Jason Wilcox? Do you imagine this to be a good signing and one that's going to be ultimately helpful for the club?
Yeah, I think the initial reaction from the majority of fans of what I've seen on Twitter and social media has been quite a positive one. I think, like you say, I think we've been crying out for some sort of footballing structure for I don't know how long it's been now. We've had too many money people or financial people above the manager, people that haven't really got the football knowledge. And I think the manager's been hung out to dry once too many times over the last few years. I think because of that reason, they've not had the support. I think Wilcox is a good move, personally. It's a footballing body, it's footballing mind into the club, along with anyone else that's due to come alongside him. The more the merrier, as I say. But yeah, I think the key thing between him and Ten Hag is going to be how they're going to align. Are their ideas going to clash? Are they going to clash too much to a point where they're going to go, look, it's not good. If you're not going to go along with what we think's right, are they going to move Ten Hag on? Are they going to align? We're all hoping something's going to align, whether it's with Ten Hag or with a new manager, because we need something to click. But I think the key thing is having the structure above a manager, whether it's Ten Hag or someone else next season. I think having that structure there is going to be something positive to move on going forward, and hopefully have a positive effect and try and get us back competing for the top trophies.
You're silent, Barry.
I am. I'm just all see. And Jennifer obviously asked what his role was, and NT rightly says we're responsible for setting pathways for the academy players to either get into the first team or be sold loans and shaping the style of football at the club. And of course, liaising with the manager and the people upstairs. Now, there's other people due to come, and we're going to talk a little bit about them in a moment. Omar Barada, obviously, which was an absolute steal from Manchester City, which was, I enjoyed that more than taking Ronaldo away from them, if that was ever the case. But I have to ask you this, because you brought it up a moment ago about Fergie, Mark. And you said we had that model, and it was a great model. It was, and I loved it. And all through my life, I've heard people say, we need a director of football. We need this. We need it. All the other clubs have got it. We need it. And I don't know. I just sit there and wonder, do we have too many fingers in the pie all the time? Now, you take a look at how it's been at the moment. You listen to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's interview with Gary Neville and the guys on, I can't remember what the podcast is called.
The overlap.
Thank you. It's the overlap. Yeah, there's a different thing to call it. I can't think what the name is. But they did a great interview with Ollie. And when they did that, it became very clear that it's a bit like almost the United Nations, insofar as everybody could agree that if one person goes, I veto, then it's not allowed to happen. And I found that really weird, that you can have a backroom staff where the manager says, this is who I want, stick to football. Thank you, Dave. He puts, he says, this is who I want. And somebody else above him could go, no, we're not having that player. Case in point, Erling Haaland. He rang him up said, get Erling Haaland in before he was the manager. And they all went, oh, no, we've got people. Don't worry about that. Thank you very much. And then he came in as the manager. He said, look, we've got this lad from Norway, really good. He's banging the goals in. Get him for 25 million. Let's do that. Didn't get him. Let him go to Manchester City for a ridiculous amount of money. And now all of a sudden, he's been banging goals in left, right and centre. Now, I don't understand that, because when we get to a point of sacking a manager like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because of poor performance, he's not going to be the one that comes out on an interview show like that and go, yeah, these people above us, they really dug my grave for me. He's taken the bullet and said, it's my decision, all of that. But it's not completely, is it? So why is it that these people above the manager are allowed to make those decisions? Unless it's a financial one. So, for example, like when we're playing Football Manager, you've all had it. You go off to go and buy a player, and eventually the chairman will go, you can't spend £100 million on that. We're Forest Green Rovers. What are you playing at? You don't have that money. You don't even have 10 million and you're trying to spend that money. Of course they're going to veto it. And that makes sense. But that should surely be the only reason to say that we don't have the money to buy that person. They shouldn't surely be sitting there and just saying, no, we've seen videos of this player, we don't want them, unless they're the manager. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think they have to have defined spheres of responsibility. Certainly, I mean, the biggest problem with that just seemed to me that for our scouting department, apparently to report that Haaland was not up to, it's just beggars belief, really. Because I mean, you know, the word was out about him as a young player very quickly about the kind of talent that was there. So I tend to think it was having the wrong people. And I think you've got to have a proper structure there where everyone's got their own, unless you've got accountability, unless you're able to say, look, that is your job. It is your job to make a point there, so that if it all goes pear-shaped, we point the finger at you. And I think it's a big problem in football in general, actually, that the manager's always the fall guy. Because you have football teams now are complicated entities, big football teams are. And it's very easy for the board to accept the media attention that comes on the manager or the head coach and sort of then sack them when things aren't going well. I'd say that Ollie and certainly Mourinho, although he feathered his own nest to some degree, certainly carried the can when there were certainly problems elsewhere in the club. And it's not just at United, but I think it's been particularly problematic. So what you've got to have is those people have all got to have specific spheres of responsibility. Now, at the moment, I don't know what they are. I know we've got a load of people in. Hopefully, Jim Ratcliffe knows what each one's got to do, but they've got to be, it can't be right. Somebody, almost management by committee, like you said, by like the United Nations or something, where someone vetoes it so you don't do it. Someone's got to be able to make decisions in that particular area. And if it's a liaison between Jason Wilcox and Ten Hag about the playing side, then equally they have got to have some kind of idea of where the parameters are. Mm-hmm. And it sounds complicated saying that, and I think it is complicated. You know, we always say that football's a simple game when it's played well. It is, but the actual mechanics to get it to look a simple game are actually really, really complicated. So I don't know. We'll have to see what roles all these people have. All I know is the people we had in those roles in the past were often the wrong people. And the whole value system was wrong. Ed Woodward talking about selling shirts and merchandise, and that was how you measured a successful club. You knew then that United were not looking in the right direction. So that's the first thing you've got to get right. Then get everybody delivering to the right values. Otherwise, we'll continue going round in circles.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Matt, I found the bit I was looking for. That's what I've been searching for. I've found a site. Lost the site, but I've got it again now. The technical director. Mm-hmm. I found the 10 key things they're supposed to do. They should be establishing and nourishing strategic alliances. They establish operational processes. All of this sounds fine so far. They might do player profiling, scouting and recruitment strategies, set those sorts of things up, which is fine. You know, you can just have the manager say, you know, where are we scouting? That gets the information to him. I mean, don't have a major drama with that either. Mm-hmm. ongoing coach development opportunities. That makes sense, giving them places where they can go to learn more, get better, set those things up. All sounds good so far. Staff profiling and recruitment, making sure we've got the right people if we need them. Maintain oversight of the staffing structure. So far, everything sounds quite, it's just oversight, making sure everybody can do what they need to do. But the other three things they mention are establishing a club performance culture, establishing compelling coaching and playing philosophies, and understand that this is not a coaching role. Now, what I find bizarre here is the people that are doing the coaching and the manager. This is where the problem for me, I think, lies. If Ten Hag doesn't get on board with what Jason Wilcox wants, Ten Hag will go.
Yeah.
But has Jason Wilcox been brought in for his nous at setting up a compelling way of playing football or not? Like, I find that really weird. It's not a coaching role, but he's got to tell the coaches what they've got to do.
Yeah, you sort of got to distinguish between. It's a strange one. I think because it comes back to undermining the manager again. Ultimately, I think you've got to decipher between a coach and a technical director. There is a big difference for me. I think the first few points you outlined there, overseeing the structure of the club, bringing staff in, doing whatever they need to do within the structure of the club. I think when it comes to the actual team, I think it generally has to come down to the manager. If they're all in alignment and they all agree on a compromise, whether they think this is right, that's how they should be playing, fair enough. But I think ultimately if they're making a decision over Ten Hag's head or whoever the manager may be, I think it's undermining the manager, and that's when you start having the problems. And the structure then becomes, you look at it and go, is it really working? But like Mark says, they all need their own key defined roles. Because if you all start piling in, going, you need to be doing this, it all starts getting very messy very, very quickly. So they all need their own key defined roles and stick to their own specialties. Then it'll work perfectly, hopefully, touch wood. But yeah, if they're all, like you say, fingers in the pies, it gets really messy and undermines the manager ultimately. And that's and it will spill down onto the pitch at the end of the day to the players, because the players will be aware of what's going on above them. And then you're not really solving the problem, and you're in the same cycle all over again.
I think it's going to be very interesting seeing how
interesting one word for it. Yeah.
It is seeing how it all melts together. Because I've got to be honest. Excuse me. I still maintain that the best model is that one person is in charge and that person makes decisions. Like, again, when you go on Football Manager, you've got the option. You can get a director of football. I never get a director of football because they just keep trying to tell me things that I don't want to know. It's like, I'm in charge because you're not going to get the sack. I'm going to get the sack. And if I can hire you, that's even worse. How can I hire you yet you're in charge effectively? It doesn't make any sense. So, I don't. I'm not a huge fan of all this, but I'm looking to be proven wrong. And I hope I am. I really, really am. I've got to say that the chat's going wild at the moment. I've been looking for some things to put up, and there's not been much because they're having a lovely chat about beer. Seems to be the case.
There's some reference to beer in there.
Yeah. Jennifer has been talking about obviously the one of the jobs that's going to be done is to fix the lights and leaky roof.
So he's doing
a better beer selection. So Jennifer asked for a Manchester version of Newcastle Brown, which probably makes sense.
Don't think we need that.
Dave called it Boddingtons, which reminded me of some adverts because there's not a huge amount of them for Newcastle Brown now, but I do remember seeing Boddingtons advertised on there along with John Smiths and Peter Kay back in the 90s and all that sort of stuff. Other beers are available. And then it's all gone into Newcastle and everybody's quoting Kevin Keegan and having the time of their life. So
Early days.
What a time to be alive. I'm Operator. I don't know if you have had your chance to talk about that. How cool was that to just go to bed one night and then wake up the next morning and find out we were stealing one of Manchester City's backroom staff? Does it worry you slightly, Mark, with the fact that they're on 115 charges and we're nicking one of their people that allegedly had nothing to do with it? But equally, Allegedly, we'll never know. Allegedly. But despite all of these allegedlys that we're saying, does that worry you slightly? Or
I have had a City fan say to me that well, if he comes, then he's obviously the one who's responsible for all of it, and he's running out, and now he'll be the one. I don't believe that for a minute. Anything started from the moment they were taken over, and they've been running that way ever since. I don't think any one person is responsible for that. It's how they're briefed. Well, again, somebody with experience at another football club. What a treat. I mean, what an amazing thing to do, to actually think, to actually run a football club. You need people with experience of running football clubs. It's such a novel idea. Amazing no one else ever thought of it. But, and I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? They've got about, I mean, what I will say, adding on to what we were saying before, whether it's him or whether it's Wilcox or whoever it is, this will evolve. It won't happen overnight. And I do think, we can say we've been patient for long enough now, but this is not going to come out as a sudden sort of fix all to everything. These people will be jostling. They're powerful people with their own ideas, and they'll be jostling for position within the football club. And it will take a few months at least for that to kind of establish a pattern of work. And perhaps some heads will have to roll in the meantime as well. So I don't think we should get carried away with thinking, well, we've got a structure in place now, it's going to be great. It's going to take a while for that structure to embed itself.
No, exactly. You are not wrong. Matt, for you, I mean, that was quite a thing, wasn't it? Like I say, waking up in the morning and just like, oh my God, like there wasn't even a hint of it. Fabrizio Romano and his mates weren't going up on Twitter saying news that this person might be coming. It was just a straight up, this has happened.
Yeah.
And we've all been caught napping.
I think that was the most surprising thing, because United never do that. Everything lingers on for weeks, months, years before anything actually happens. So the fact that he came out all of a sudden was something different. It was quite refreshing, actually. And obviously the fact that he's come from City just makes it doubly a double bonus. It's just great. But yeah, I think, like Mark says, we've been crying out for it for ages. It's the logical thing to do. You bring someone in that knows exactly how to run a football club from top to bottom. It's got the experience. Look at the players he was responsible for bringing into City. Whether the people above him at City have done that in a legal way, in the right way, who knows? But the fact that he knows how to run the club, he knows how a football club works, he's ultimately going to hopefully make the difference at United. It won't happen overnight. We all know that. If anyone believes that, then good luck to you, because it's not going to happen overnight. Will we see a difference come next season? Hopefully we'll start seeing signs of progress, because we've got a big summer ahead, and I think it's going to be probably the busiest transfer window we probably had for a very, very long time. I know we always say that, but I think now with these people coming in, I think that will actually happen. They won't mess about.
It is starting to look good, but for as good as it was, Mark, to wake up in the morning, find out we nicked one of City's people, what didn't happen was the same thing at Newcastle. Now, with that one, it's a much different prospect. Now, obviously, Dan Ashworth, we believe, it is going to be coming to United. All of the signs are pointing towards that. Obviously, United haven't officially said anything yet, but there are enough trusted sources, I think, coming out to make it clear that's what's going to happen. Now, obviously, Newcastle put him on gardening leave, the same as Omar Barada went on, so nothing unusual there. But what's really interesting is we don't know what the numbers are. Newcastle, that was being quoted, were asking for £20 million. United, by the sounds of things, offering 2, the things that I've read so far. And now it's going to arbitration. Now, it's a two-edged sword, this one, isn't it? Because from Newcastle's point of view, you can understand them not just wanting to give one of their people over to rivals. I suppose that's kind of what we are at the moment. We're all battling for the same sort of position at the minute. And obviously Newcastle wants to set themselves up as a big club and a serious club. So losing their backroom staff is not a helpful thing for them to do that. But equally, asking for £20 million for a backroom member of staff is crazy. Like, it's 20 Steve Coppels, which is quite a thing. Like, you can't be asking for £20 million for for some guy that works in the back room. It seems very strange. So where do you stand with that? Because I think Newcastle are putting themselves in a situation now where people in the future are going to look at that and go, well, would I want that job? If
Absolutely.
I get a better opportunity, they're just going to nick me out on there, and I'm just going to stagnate. What do you reckon? Are they pricing themselves?
I don't know where this transfer market and backroom stuff actually started. It seems a bit of an odd one to be. And like you say, Barry, you do feel that they're cutting the nose off to spite the face a little bit. Newcastle, yeah, you want to keep the guy. We understand that. And I like the fact they want to keep him because it suggests that he's worth having. It suggests that he's worth, and it suggests that despite the potential that Newcastle have got at the moment, he sees value in coming to us as well. So, the thing all makes sense from our point of view. I think we were in for him a few years ago. I seem to remember us being linked with Dan Ashworth in the past as well. I may be wrong. Maybe it's another Ashworth, but I think we were. But no, I don't understand that at all. I mean, I agree with you completely, Barry. I don't think it makes sense from any perspective. And yeah, I get that Newcastle don't want to lose him. That happens sometimes. We've lost people we didn't want to lose. It's a big boys game. And, so, yeah, I think putting somebody on gardening leave and sending it to arbitration, I mean, in the end, who's going to win at the end of that? Newcastle are probably going to get as much as they want for him anyway. It all sounds a bit like throwing your toys out your pram to me.
I mean, it's Dave sitting there giving it, the courts will sort it out, and they will. But again, imagine that, you're again a lower club, ultimately, in terms of history.
He's gone again. Used to be me that had the technical problems when I came on here.
Muck about it. But what I find really interesting about all of that is that by taking them to court and doing what they're doing, it just smacks, like I say, Matt, of nobody in the future being able to go to Newcastle and feel like they're going to have a chance to progress.
Yeah.
So they are really cutting their nose off to spite their face, aren't they? Because they really are putting themselves in a situation where nobody will feel like that's a place I can go and move on if I need to. The player equivalent, I suppose, is going into like Erling Haaland had, into a club, but with a minimum fee release clause. Are you going to have that now with these guys? If a club comes in for me that you're only going to ask them for £2 or £3 million, where do you think we stand with that?
It is a bit unnecessary, to be honest with you. Like, say, for a director of football, you won't expect it to be quite so complicated. I think it is very, very clear that he wants to come to United. I think that, without a doubt, to be fair, who wouldn't? Ultimately, you know what I mean? You've got the chance to be director of football at one of the biggest club in the world. I just think the way Newcastle are going about it just doesn't make a lot of sense. The fact that it's going to court over the sake of, I know 20 million's been quoted. I don't know how true that is. It's all paper speculation. But I think at the end of the day, it's just all very, very unnecessary, and it's just delaying things for us even further. I know United don't particularly want to get involved with it all, and hopefully it won't get as messy as we're hoping. I just don't get why they just won't let him explore an opportunity that he clearly wants to take up. I don't see what they're going to gain out of holding on. Maybe just doing it to backfire against us. Who knows? But yeah, it's a baffling one. But fingers crossed it can be done very, very soon, because I think he will make a big difference, to be honest.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's the fact that he wants to go.
Yeah.
It's a madness. It's not like somebody's come in and said, can we add this guy? And he's gone, well, I'm not really fussed about it. And they're constantly asking. It's the fact that he's gone.
He's forcing himself. Yeah.
Newcastle literally going, absolutely not. We're not just having people come in and take our people. And as Dave says here, Newcastle paid £2 million from Brighton. You can understand a couple of million. They shouldn't be out of pocket, and they're going to need money to go and sign up a new person. I get that, but it's still a bit weird.
United tax.
Exactly. There should be some remuneration, but it should not be that. So, yeah, it's not chronic disease. Like, I'm moving again, all is well. It's not a problem. That is just dodgy Wi-Fi at the moment. Jennifer Jordan saying, ask for Toto Wolff. He's cheaper, but with pedigree. Yeah, in Formula One. I'm not sure what he knows about football, and they're in. I mean, to be fair, Dave Brailsford was a cyclist, so I kind of see that as well. And I think we all like this idea now, as NT says, making Steve Coppell my new unit of measuring £1 million. It's an easy way to do it. First £1 million player, nice and easy. 20 Steve Coppells, it's too many. I think for a backroom staff. I like the counting. 99,997. One Steve Coppell, exactly. Very good. Ultimately, Mark, I suppose the underlying question with all of that is, with all of these potential sign-ins, people coming in, do you think these are going to be positive? I mean, you mentioned about it being an evolution, but from what you're seeing, I'm getting the feeling you think they're quite positive because they're football appointments and therefore should be quite positive in the near future.
I think reorganisations of a club always start from the top, and it's pointless doing too much with the manager and the players until you've got that top tier in position, and it's something that we've not paid attention to enough, or certainly not in a footballing sense anyway. So yeah, I'm positive about doing it, just with the caution that I don't believe it will come into, it will deliver straight away. I mean, as Jim Ratcliffe said, it's got to be a 3-year plan rather than a 10-year one, because no one wants to wait 10 years for something. But I think him saying that, he's aware that it won't happen straight away. And I think, management teams in organisations, there's always a bit of conflict. Anyone I've been in anyway, when you start. I mean, not fisticuffs necessarily, although sometimes there might be. But, that there's always a bit of conflict and a bit of jostling for position. And there will be a period of that, I'm sure. And I'm sure the media will be onto it, and they'll be portraying it, that everything's going pear-shaped at United, and it won't be. It will be us hopefully coming out of it with the kind of structure that we need.
Yeah, I agree. NT, yeah, absolutely. He was also on Gladiators. So, yeah, very good he was. Very good. And, yes, Darren Fletcher was initially doing a technical director role. Obviously, with Jason Wilcox coming in, he'll take over with that. I think Darren's job has changed slightly, but I can't remember off the top of my head to what. Matt, for you, general thoughts on the whole thing? Positive? Looking forward to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I say, I think the fact we've got some sort of structure now, something to build on. Obviously, there were many ones. Dan Ashworth, I don't know if anyone else along the way will arrive and crop up that no one's aware of. But I think, of course, it's positive. You made the changes they're making. They do look positive from a fan perspective, from an outsider's perspective. But the big question is how it's actually going to ultimately work once they all start coming together, once they all, like Barada officially starts, Ashworth comes in, get their ideas together. I think the key thing, I think you'll notice the difference is when they make the decision on the manager, because either way they have to come out and clarify something at the end of the season. Is he staying? Is he going? I think it'll all come to fruition from then. But obviously, I think between the end of the season, you'll hear things, they'll be working things in the background, but nothing will actually be definitive till the end of the season either way. But it's definitely positive. Just hopefully it works moving forward now.
It's interesting. I mean, basically, it seems like our backroom staff is effectively like the Co-op Live. When it's done and finished, it's going to be the biggest and the best in the land. But at the moment, it's just not ready to open. And we're going to have to wait until it is. So we'll see how we get on. But there we go. That's that bit. I have one final question for the pair of you, and indeed for those of you in the chat. And it's a nice little frivolous one. And I'm going to word it as follows. Do either of you think, with the FA Cup final not a million miles away, do either of you think that we are in with a genuine shout of winning the FA Cup this year? Or is this just going to be a nice little day out for us? And therefore, does that show how bad things are at the minute that we don't even think we've got a hope? Now, I don't know. I'm not even going to entertain changing parts of that question and popping in little bits, but it's up to you to make up your own minds. I'm not going to push you either way. So, Mark, what do you reckon?
I think it's a bit of a stretch to expect an entertaining day out, to be honest. I think that might be beyond us, depending what I mean, let's face it. Look, we know City are better than us. Let's not beat about it. And we know that last season they beat us and we were a better side last season than we are at the moment. We've got a hell of a task. I mean, my first trophy that I witnessed United winning was the 77 Cup final against Liverpool. And I was very young then, but no one gave us a chance then either. Everyone thought Liverpool were going to do the treble, and we had no chance whatsoever, and we beat them. Don't want to make too many parallels, but, it can happen in football. Things can happen. Things go the right way for you on the day or something like that. But it's unlikely. It's unlikely. But, I mean, the thing about me, it's about me. Right now I'm thinking, oh, no, it's not going to happen. But I know when the game starts, it's going to be, I'm going to be, this is it. This is going to be, so.
Yeah.
So I'll be there and I'll be believing on the day. I know I will.
Interesting. So there we go. Belief from Mark. NT saying about the Women's FA Cup. Jennifer saying as well, the ladies will shine, the men will probably sink, which is very interesting. They're on different days, And Dave saying, I'd like to think we'd win. I'm not feeling it really. Of course, if anybody saw Chelsea win last night against Liverpool, what a game that was, by the way.
Yeah,
it looks as though Chelsea are not going to win the WSL for the first time in about 500 years, it feels like. And it also looks, with the rate that we're going, in terms of points available as it stands, Man City could be going for the men's and women's double effectively in terms of winning both of the leagues. So could be interesting. But Man City women cannot win the FA Cup because they're not in it. It's Spurs against Manchester United, Matt. So what do you reckon? Can United go and defeat Erling Haaland and co? Or is it just going to be, I'm going to have to change my words because Mark wasn't happy with it. Is it just going to be a day out for people?
It is possible. How possible is the biggest question. I think ultimately it's a cup final, so it all comes down to the day itself. Like Mark says, on the day, everyone's going to be pumped up for it, like you do on any cup final day, no matter who you're playing. But the fact we're playing Man City gives that extra bit of edge. Do I think we'll win it? Like Mark says, it's unlikely. You look at it on paper, it is unlikely, but football's not played on paper, so it's one of them. It is possible. Will we do it? I really, really hope so, because it'd be the best day ever. And it'd be the biggest party ever if we do it. Don't you worry?
But yeah, that's the thing. It
100%. It'll be the biggest day.
A hell of a day if we do it.
100%. Do I think we do it? I've got the belief. I've always got the belief. No matter who they're playing, it's United. That's the reason you support them. You follow them, win, lose or draw. Everyone will be there. Fingers crossed we do it. I don't want to. It's hard to commit either way. I think the key word is belief. You just got to believe they can pull it off on the day. But I think the build up, you're a bit more reserved, a bit like I'm not too sure. On the day, 100% we'll be behind them. Hopefully we can pull it off.
It's definitely one of those, isn't it? It's one of those where everybody said we weren't going to do it against Liverpool. Everybody thought that was it. I can distinctly remember saying myself, I hope they move that away from the 16th of March to the 17th. Because then it's not on my birthday, and if we get absolutely larruped, it's not going to be a problem because it's not my birthday and they're not ruining it. As it goes, they could have done it on my birthday if they wanted to, because I was that far gone, I wouldn't even know the game had taken place. And if it hadn't gone wrong, I'd have forgotten the whole thing. But as it was, that didn't happen. And thank the Lord it didn't, because what a game that turned out to be. So there was no chance there. United women were told they had no chance against Chelsea in the semi-final, yet they won. So it's definitely one of those. And as NT says, a one-off game, anything is possible, but I'm refusing to believe or predict anything other than a loss. Better surprise that way. If we put it out of the bag, put it out of the bag, I forgot. Either will work. You can put it out of the bag, put it out of the hat. There's other orifices you can put it from that aren't suitable for this show. Also, it would be a real good lift for the whole club if both the men's team and women's team come home in 2 FA Cups, which it would be.
It'd be amazing.
Happy, mate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
great season. Look at the academies this year.
The academy's fabulous at the moment.
For the club, it's been a great season. Not so much for the men, but outside of the men's team, absolutely fantastic. Women, men, the kids, academy, everyone brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah. Big shout out to the Women's Academy, the under-21s, because they have won their league as well. The Men's Academy, the under-18s, won theirs. So, as we always say about United, the future's certainly bright. But it's whether or not that future comes in and plays. Guys, it has been an absolute blast. But
thank you. It's been great.
About time, as they would say in the Queen Vic. It's time, gentlemen, please. So I think that's what I said, but if I didn't, that's what I meant. So, Matt, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Mind you, if they wanted to hear more from you.
Yeah, if you want drop me a follow on Twitter, X, whatever we call it. My name's just below me to the left of me. So yeah, appreciate if you could drop me a follow. But yeah, thank you very much for having me. Much appreciated. Be another great discussion, and this hour and 16's flown by.
Absolutely. You know what? Sometimes we do it with Connor all the time. We say it's probably not going to go that long because you just think, are we going to get across everything we need to? But people in the chat seem to talk about their bits, and honestly, you could just talk for hours. That's what I love about it. That's why I love this channel, because we just sit here, have a chat like we're down the pub.
Yeah.
And honestly, we could probably go on for another hour rabbiting on, but some of us need beauty sleep like me. So, it's going to have to stop at some point. Mark, brilliant to have you on as well.
Lovely to be here, as usual, yeah. Can
anyone find you anywhere if they want to, or is there anything you want to shout out before we go?
Well, I'm not giving my address out if that's
no, I mean, we're not coming around for a cuppa, Mark. No.
I'm Mark W. Dandelion on Twitter. Dandelion because I do a radio show on Dandelion Radio, which you can listen to if you want to listen to what I listen to, or check out what I listen to.
Listen to on there.
It's very much in the tradition of John Peel. Interesting, new, different, challenging. Tries to be anyway. So very much an emphasis on that. I do one for FSK in Hamburg as well, a monthly show for them. So there's basically no avoiding me once you enter my little world.
There you go then. So get in there. Enjoy that if you want to. Dandelion Radio. That's
check it out.
What to be looking for. Go for it. Listen, gang, as you know, it's that time, and the gremlins are in the computer. And I'm not holding out much. I'm not holding out any hope for it. I've got to be honest. I feel like I'm going to push the button and it ain't going to happen. But we'll see. NT, I'm sure, is going to be sitting there unable to contain himself. We're going to try and close the show. We'll see what happens. Just before we do, what have we got coming up? Today is Thursday. So tomorrow night is Friday. So we should be doing the Liverpool preview for the women's team. So come and join us on WFC for that. On Saturday, it will be the preview for the Palace game, because that's going to be on the Monday. That's here on the men's channel. Sunday, there'll be nothing at all. It's a day of rest, just as the good Lord intended. And on Monday, we shall end up back on WFC, taking a little look at the Liverpool game, which hopefully we have won again on WFC. Tuesday night, we'll be back here in order to have a massive conversation about the Palace game. And then we'll just go round and round again, because that's how it worked. My thanks to you all. Thanks for everyone in the comments. You've been superb. Thanks to those of you that are watching this back. If you've made it this far, don't forget to push that little like button, and we will see you soon. Have a good weekend, everyone. Take care.
Bye.